Hello and welcome again to King of Games Mobile. I'm here to review the new box that was just released, Valiant Souls. We'll look at some of the feature cards real quick. Elemental Hero Plasma Vice. You have to have Elemental Hero Sparkman and Elemental Hero Blade Edge. Blade Edge is in this box. Sparkman was in a previous box. Must be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. If this card attacks a defensive position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. You can discard one card to attack one or to target one attack position monster your opponent controls. Destroy that target. So that's going to be a pretty good monster. You'll notice that the destroy effect is a discard effect, which means that you can load up your graveyard with other heroes if you want to. And it also gives you piercing damage. So this card can do a lot of work, and of course it's in the E-Hero archetype, so you can just slap it into your E-Hero deck, shuffle it a little bit. You still run the Fusion Cycling Plant, and so overall that's a really good card. It could really help you go for game. Some of the other ones, Vision Hero Witch Raider. So this thing actually is pretty good too. It says you contribute summon this card face up. You contribute traps you control. So that means that theoretically you could set traps and then use them the same turn to summon her. And I need to see it tested yet, but you may be able to use it with something like Wild Tornado, which would then let you combo off and destroy more of your opponent's cards. So the possibilities to get a lot of advantage out of this card are pretty good. But I need to check that because the tornado effect is triggered by a destroy, and so tributing may not count as a destroy with that trap. It's a little bit more research, and I'll update the comments when I find out for sure. But it's something to keep in mind. The next one is Fabled Soul Kiss. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send 2 cards except Fabled Soul Kiss from your hand to the graveyard. Special summon this card from the graveyard. So it's a Fiend monster. We know that there are a lot of Fiend decks, especially Arch-Fiend decks, that run out of the graveyard, so it works there. It could also probably work with zombies or light swarms. So really, this card will allow you to load up the graveyard as well as to summon a decent stat monster. So it's something that you could use. You could even run this with something like Tribute to the Doomed, and then use that to just destroy whatever your opponent has, and then that would just be to load the graveyard, so that you could then special summon him. So any graveyard centric deck that can run with fiends, and that's easy to get cards into the graveyard from your hand, this card would work fine. Okay, Dark World Dealings. Each player draws 1 card, and then each player discards 1 card. So basically, it's just a 1-for-1. You draw a card, you discard a card. So it'll help you if you have dead hands, but it's not like an amazing card, really. Of course, it also can help you load your graveyard. So graveyard decks, this is something else that can help them. Mask Change. Mask Change is actually a hero card, so if you played Real Life Yu-Gi-Oh!, you may be familiar with this card and another similar one called Mask Change 2. So the effect is target 1 hero monster you control, send it to the graveyard. Also, after that, if it left the field by this effect, special summon 1 masked hero monster from your extra deck with the same attribute that the sent monster had when it was on the field. Its original attribute if face down. So this is a quick play card. You can use it on either player's turn. Let's say that you have an opponent that's playing like Cyber Angels or some effect that has a lot of targeting. So what you can do is when they target your card, you could actually activate Mass Change in response, and then swap out for one of your extra deck monsters, and then there's no longer a valid target, so they waste the effect. Or if they just have something big that it looks like they're going to beat over your monster with, you can use this to summon out something else that's bigger. So it's really just sort of an ambush card, but it can come in really handy. You can, of course, use it on your turn just to special summon out larger monsters, but a lot of times it's used, as I said, in ambushed in Real Life Yu-Gi-Oh!, the TCG. So, Amazonas Heirloom. Equip only to an Amazonas monster. Once per turn, that monster cannot be destroyed by battle. When the equipped monster attacks, after damage calculation, destroy the attack target. So it's basically like an equipped card that prevents destruction, but it's also like a permanent Super Rush Headlong. It's a really powerful card. You have to run it in the Amazonas deck, so that deck really hasn't been meta for a long time, but you could try it out with this card, see how much of a difference you makes, but I don't believe it's searchable, and so it's going to be one of those luck cards. Needle Sealing. When there are 4 or more monsters on the field, destroy all face-up monsters. The text is pretty clear. This could be used to punish people who overextend, but there's sort of a rule in the TCG that any card that depends on your opponent to activate is a bad card, and there's no way you can get 4 monsters on the field, right? You can be in control of 3 at the most. There are a couple cards that let you put a token on your opponent's field, so I guess technically you could get 4 cards of your own volition, but it's not going to be an early game card most likely, and so if you draw it early, it's probably a brick. It's just going to sit there, and I'm not going to say it's terrible, but there are more likely going to be cards that are going to be live more of the time. Paleozoic Canadia. This is actually a relatively new card, even in real life Yu-Gi-Oh! It's about 2 years old, I guess. Target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, change it to face-down defense position. So it's basically Book of Moon and a trap card. Once per chain, when a trap card is activated while this card is in your graveyard, special summon this card as a normal monster. This card is not treated as a trap card. If summoned this way, this card is unaffected by monster effects. Also banish it when it leaves the field. So this card does 2 things. As I said, it's a Book of Moon, but it's also a special summon monster. So you probably see these in like the Odeon burn decks, the ones that rely on his skill that cause damage every time a trap is activated. There's a couple other Paleozoic cards in this box. This is just the highest rarity one, but because it has that extra effect that lets you special summon it as a monster, it can allow you to build up tribute fodder really quickly, and especially in water decks is where you're probably going to see this. In real life, there was a card called Norden, and also another one called Bahamut Shark. They're not in Duel Links right now, and they may never come out, but if they do, it's good to have this card laying around, and all the Paleozoics actually, because basically what happens is you use these to quickly get out either the Bahamut Shark to summon the Totally Awesome, or you just get the Totally Awesome, and that Totally Awesome can basically it can negate any card that your opponent activates, and then set it face down on your side of the field and steal it basically. So let's say you drop a Regeki or something, they can negate it and then take it and set it on their side and then use it against you later. So if that ever comes out in Duel Links, it's going to be ridiculous. Again, I don't know for sure that it will or will not, but if you can afford to have these just kind of sit in the background, it might come in handy. Okay, so let's just go through some of the high rarity cards. I don't want this video to be like an hour. Eclipse Wyvern. If this card is sent to the graveyard, banish 1 level 7 or higher light or dark dragon-type monster from the deck. If this card is banished from your graveyard, you can add the monster banished by this card's effect to your hand. So it's similar to graveyard looping. It's just now playing with a banish zone. There are various cards you can use that banish things. And then, there's some of the one-turn banish cards. I haven't seen this card played a lot yet in Duel Links. It saw some play in real life, but we're going to have to see if it affects the meta. There aren't still too many cards that banish things really easily, so except for this card, and it's an ultra rare. So if you want to use this to try and load your hand with dragon cards, it's not going to be super easy. But you could look into it. But I'm going to say that that's not going to be a real meta impacting card at first. Hardened Arm Dragon. You can special summon this card by sending one level 8 or higher monster from your hand to the graveyard. If you tribute this card for the tribute summon of a level 7 or higher monster, that monster cannot be destroyed by card effects. Okay, so it's a powerful card if you can, if you tribute summon with this card. The problem is it has to be for a tribute summon of a level 7 or higher monster, so either you're going to need like double summon and cost down, or a special summon effect that gets out monsters, and then you'll need to use this to tribute. With cards like this, like I said, it's a strong effect, but the problem with this is that it's going to require other cards to really make it work. I'm not going to say that it's bad. Since it is a dragon, you could try and combo it off with like Kid Moto. Use Kid Moto to get it out on your opponent's turn when they kill Kid Moto, and then use a cost down or something else to get out like a Blue Eyes is probably what you'd use this for. And then your Blue Eyes can't be destroyed by card effects, which is nice, but like I said, it's a combo piece. And so it's something that's going to take either your opponent not killing it for a couple turns, or you're going to need multiple combo pieces in your hand. And it's a high risk, high reward thing. A lot of the cards that require a lot of other cards to combo with have very strong end boards, but the more pieces it requires, the more inconsistent it is. So it's one of those things you're going to have to play test and just see if you can make it work. There is the trap card with the Gladiator Beast that prevents all damage and all cards from being destroyed. So you could try running that, or like Draining Shield, something like that, to try and protect this long enough to use it to tribute. But like I said, it's going to require other cards. So, keep that in mind. Okay. Karakuri Ninja MD Model 339 Sazank. This card must attack if able. When this face-up attack position card is selected as an attack target, change it to defense position. When this card is flipped face-up, select one face-up monster on the field and send it to the graveyard. During the turn this card is flipped face-up, it can attack your opponent directly. So if your opponent didn't have that many life points, and they don't have any battle traps, and they don't have Karibo or Sphere Karibo, then you could use this to go for game. I think the effect that people are going to probably use more is you could use it like in those spirit decks, that kind of thing, where you just have a bunch of traps that negate your opponent's attacks, and then you just poke at them until you finally kill them. Those work sometimes, but I don't find them to be the most reliable. The other thing is, it has that Man-Eater bug effect, but when it says select, that's the same thing as targeting. So just keep in mind that if you want to try and use this, if the monster has protection against targeting, then it's not going to work out for you. Elemental Hero Plasma Vice. We already talked about this card. It has a pretty decent effect that you can discard to destroy an attack position monster. And it also does piercing damage, so your opponent can't stall you out by just setting stuff in defense all the time. Masked Hero Anki. Must be special summoned with Mass Change and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card can attack your opponent directly, but when it does so using this effect, the battle damage inflicted to your opponent is halved. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can add one change quick play spell card from your deck to your hand. You can only use this effect of Masked Hero Anki once per turn. So I guess if you wanted to spend a bunch of money and get multiple Mass Change and multiple Masked Hero Ankis, then you could loop through those in a couple turns and have multiple Ankis, which could be good, but it's, how much money do you want to spend on this game? I'm not going to be running that strategy myself. Fires of Doomsday. Special summon 2 Doomsday tokens in defense position. These tokens cannot be attributed for a dark tribute summon unless it is for a dark monster. You cannot summon other monsters the turn you activate this card, but you can normal set. So you could probably use this for like maybe a Dark Necrofear deck, Trance Archfiend deck. It's more Fiend support. That wasn't the first piece we got. There was also, as mentioned, the Fabled Soul Kiss that would probably work with Fiends. So it's sort of like a scapegoat, but only for Fiends. And so, you could use it to get out like a high defense Fiend monster. But I mean, you know how to play with tokens by now. I don't really need to go into it that much. Okay, Elemental Hero Blade Edge. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage to your opponent. So, again, piercing damage is nice. People can't stall you out. You win games faster. Photon Wyvern. When this card is normal or flip summoned, destroy all set cards your opponent controls. So, if you've got someone using a trap-heavy deck, you can just summon this. Bam. All their tracks are gone. Of course, they'll probably activate whatever they have that is activatable at that time. But it's not going to be optimal for them probably. And so, you can disrupt people that are playing, Turtle or Protect the Castle decks. Fabled Solkius, we already talked about him. DDM, Different Dimension Master. Once per turn, you can discard 1 spell card to special summon one of your removed from play monsters. So, you could put this in a deck with, I guess, the Eclipse Wyvern, try and get him back. There's other, like Psychics use a lot of banishing. You could try that. And there's also a couple spell cards that banish. There's like a Tribute to the Doom that came out in the last mini box, but it banishes instead of putting it in the graveyard. So you could use it, but again, there aren't that many banishing effects in this game, so it's going to be kind of situational. I wouldn't buy out the box just to get this card. Girgia Attackers. So there's been Girgia support in a couple other boxes. This one effect is once per turn, you can change this card to face down defense position. When this card is flipped face up, you can destroy any number of spell trap cards on the field up to the number of other Girgia monsters you control. So, you don't want him to be the first Girgia you summon. He has a destroy effect, and so as long as you can get some other Girgias out first, then that's pretty helpful. But his effect is reusable. You can flip him back in defense every turn. So, if you can keep him alive, then you can pretty much make sure your opponent doesn't have any sort of effective back row. Okay, and then Karakuri Muso, model 818, Hypa. This card must attack if able. When this face-up attack position card is selected as an attack target, change it to defense position. If this card attacks, it is changed to defense position at the end of the battle phase. So when you have a rank 4 or a level 4 card with 2100 attack, it's not going to just be free. The highest you're going to get is 1900 without negative effects. So this thing, essentially, you can attack with it, but it's probably going to die next turn because it's only going to have 19 or 1100 defense. Excuse me. We already talked about Heirloom. Backup Rider. Target one face-up monster on the field. It gains 1500 attack until the end of this turn. It's good, but there are other traps like Metal Morph, Rare Metal Morph. There's quick play cards that do basically the same thing. I think 1500 is the highest total amount of attack, but it can only be used on your turn, and so sacrificing the utility of the other cards, I would say the cards are going to be better usually. Mask Change. We talked about this already. Double Cyclone. Target one spell trap card you control and one spell trap card your opponent controls. Destroy them. This is another thing you could use with, I think it's Wild Tornado. You could use this to destroy your Wild Tornado and then one of their set cards and then get a free destroy. So, but again, it's one of those cards that to get the most out of it, it requires you have other cards. And as I've said, the more combo pieces that are required, the less often you're going to use it. Blast with Chain. Target one face-up monster you control. Equip this card to that target. It gains 500 attack. If this card is destroyed by a card effect while equipped, target one card on the field, destroy that target. So the destroy effect is only if it's targeted. So let's say somebody uses Dispel or something on this, then you get the destroy effect. But if you just kill the monster that's equipped to, you don't get the effect. Also, like Cosmic Cyclone is a banish effect, so that does not count as a destruction. It's just moving the card to a different zone, so you also don't get the effect there. But 500 attack, it's basically a fancy reinforcements. Fusion Reserve. Reveal one fusion monster in your extra deck. Add one of the fusion materials whose name is specifically listed on that card from your deck to your hand. Then you can add one polymerization from your graveyard to your hand. So you don't have to have a polymerization in your graveyard to use it. It says you can. So, it's not a situation where you're locked out with no valid target. You just have to have a valid target in your deck. It's basically a search card, and search cards are usually pretty good. It's basically like a destiny draw whenever you need it. So I would say it's a pretty good card, but you have to use it in a fusion deck. Okay, and then we just get back to the rare cards. I could review these in a different video if you guys want, but it's not, most of these cards weren't super impressive to me. You'll notice that like you have all the Paleozoics as normal cards. Send one trap card from your deck to the graveyard. I mean, this is just basically loading the graveyard with Paleozoics to special summon back. Target one banished card, return it to the graveyard. So recovering banished assets. Again, you don't banish that much yet in Duel Links, but it might come up later on. Eldonia. Target one face-up monster on the field. It gains 500 attack and defense until the end of this turn. And then again, it can be special summoned as a monster. And then I believe that's it for the Paleozoics. They are normal cards, so they'll be easier to drop, but they might not be super good yet. But you can try them out with Odeon, and I would keep them just in case they ever release XZ monsters. One other thing I was going to point out is Stygian Dirge. Reduce levels of all monsters your opponent controls by 1. That sounds like a really stupid, why would you want to do that? But if Synchro monsters and XZ monsters ever come out, let's say someone builds a deck that requires all level 4 XYZs, you flip this over and now all their level 4 cards are level 3 cards. They can't use their extra deck. Same with Synchros. You can make it a lot harder for them to get their Synchros out because the normal plays they use, won't work. The levels will be off. But right now it's not super helpful. I'm just pointing out, the card has potential for the future. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my review now. There are some other cards in here. You can just go through and read them. And, there's more hero support in here. Most of it is hero support. Like I said, there's some Amazonas. If you want me to, review the rest of the set, just leave it in the comments. But for now, the video is getting pretty long. And so I'm going to end it here. But thanks for tuning in to King of Games Mobile, and we'll see you next time.